All right, Kevin Inoue here again from Fight Designer LLC, and the next of my new swords that I wanted to share from Street Forge Armory and Demon Stith is the Egyptian Khopesh. It's, I suppose, arguable whether this is a sword or a short sword, a large knife. It's almost an axe, and you can see how this kind of evolved from the Epsilon axe of ancient Egypt. A lot of folks know this weapon thanks to things like Scorpion King or Assassin's Creed Origins. It has been getting a lot more publicity in the last couple of decades. But this is a very distinctive Egyptian weapon, which I was wishing I had some of, although it would have to been aluminum for that gig, when I did Aida a while back, because we had the Egyptians versus Nubians there. And so I've been wanting to play with one of these for a while, and now I have a good stage combat carbon steel version of one of these that I can play with. Now, yes, historically, they would more likely have been bronze than steel, perhaps, and I may try, if you look at my previous video on doing coloring effects on aluminum for some of the Percy Jackson swords that I was playing with, the leaf blade short swords, I could maybe try something like that on steel. It would have to be different chemicals, of course, on steel than it is for aluminum. But you could try some coloration on something to make it look a little bit more bronze. But frankly, bronze is just a little heavier, a little softer, not ideal for stage combat. This was a much more economical and practical choice, I think. So as with the other Street Forge Armory Demon Stith blades, this is a one-piece construction with wood slabs on the side, pinned wood, so it's going to be super solid. It sounds fairly good, this length of blade and this thickness of blade doesn't really need a counterweight. It didn't have one historically, and when you look at it, this is obviously a chopping blade anyway. This is not a finesse point work kind of blade. This is not a small sword. So this is more like a giant kukri or something that's just meant to hack in and chop. I have seen some styles, probably more on the fantasy end, that have a little bit more of a hook at the end, which I could see being fun for things like grabbing shields and pulling. This is not it's got a little bit of a flare there, but it's not really gonna get you a pull. But you can with this front end. In terms of finish, pretty good. There may be a few bits here like the tip, which I might round off a little bit more before I'm going to rent these out as stage combat props. Just some of these angles, I want to make sure that things are super safe, obviously, before I use them with actors on a gig, just because liability issues and ethically I don't want anyone to get hurt on my watch. But that's all fairly easy fixes. As with the Nimcha that I looked at earlier, I want to make sure that it plays well with my other blades, because if the hardness is too different, you can't use them together. Like mixing steel and aluminum, your aluminum is going to get chewed up. So what I've got here this time is a Starfire Blades Gladius, because that's a similar era. I could see that being a part of a Julius Caesar or something. One of our classic plays where we have the Romans in Egypt. And these are similar construction as with the BKS blade I compared the Nimcha to. The Starfire blades are generally welded, so they're super solid, they have a good sound, they have a leather wrap on the grip as opposed to the wood slabs, but very similar. And these seem to be very similar hardness. I don't see either one really taking big chunks out of the other, which is great. I think they'll play fine. So you can get a hook with this part here, as I just did on my little tummy training arm and pulled this off. This was originally a bike stand that I got when I was having to try and teach stage combat in the early days of COVID, when we couldn't meet in person and we're doing it all over Zoom. Here's hoping we never have to go back to those times again, but it's a good option to have sometimes for the occasional workshop. The steel quality seems pretty good. It's got a nice solid sound. It obviously sounds metallic without ringing obnoxiously. Frankly, some of my welded, especially broadswords from Baltimore Knife and Steel and Starfire, they're too loud. Like they ring like tuning forks, and you get a couple of those going in a battle, and it's just it's an instant tinnitus for everybody on stage. So this isn't bad. I think it's a pretty good balance of acoustically. of sounding metallic without being too obnoxious. It's got a curve that just wants to go forward. Again, a lot like the kukri. I haven't gotten to play with these much. These would often be used in conjunction with a shield. So it's not like you're going to be having to do a whole lot of parries or anything like that with it. Although you can do deflections and catches. And if you did like a shield parry, you could trap and pull, catch, deflect, redirect, something like that. If you're using this in conjunction with the shield. I'm not aware of a whole lot of folks doing that style of shield, though. A lot of Egyptian, North African, Central African shields, South African shields. I mean, they were hide, they were reed, they were other materials that that modern makers don't generally use. We get mostly either steel, aluminum, or plywood for our available stage combat shields, or occasionally polypropylene, which could be a decent equivalent, I suppose, to a heavy hide. So I'm not entirely sure what would work best with this shield-wise, and that'll be something else to look at maybe sometime. Next time I do a sword and shield class, it could be fun to allow this as one of the options for one of the combatants, as some sort of Egyptian shield and Khopesh for a sword and shield class. Now that the SAFD has opened things up a little bit more stylistically to allow for more of that cultural diversity and variety in our stage combat. But I gotta say, it's a good feel. It's not too heavy, but it certainly has some authority and wants to go forward. Center of balance. Here we go. You know, it's a good. What is that? Like 4.5 inches out from where you're grabbing it. But it's a short enough blade that's still quite manageable. You can cast the energy with it, and it'll stop on point quite easily. Ooh, got a little whoosh there. That was nice. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing with this some more. Like I said, I'll probably do a little more of finishing. There's a bit of a burr there that could catch a knuckle or other things where an actor might end up unhappy. I mean, these are steel blades. You wouldn't want to get hit with them regardless, but I do want to round off some of these edges a bit more just so it doesn't rip a costume or something like that. But I am looking forward to playing with this more and seeing what these can do. So thank you, Damon.